Rejoice, children of Zion, rejoice. Be glad in the everlasting one, your God, who sends us rain, the autumn and spring rains as of old, and a new spring crop. The threshing floors will be heaped with grain. The vats will overflow with new wine and oil. I will repay you for all the years that were eaten away by the locust, the winged locust, the scavenger locust, the bark stripping locust, my great army, which I sent against you. You will eat your fill and be satisfied, and praise the name of the everlasting one, your God. That God who has dealt wondrously with you. My people will never again be put to shame. You will know that I am in the midst of Israel, that I, the everlasting one, am your God, and there is no other. My people will never again be put to shame. After that, I will pour out my spirit on all humankind. Your daughters and sons will prophesy. Your elders will have prophetic dreams, and your young people will see visions. In those days, I will pour out my spirit even on those in servitude, women and men alike. Everyone who calls on the name of God will be rescued, for there will be a remnant on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. This is the God's promise. Anyone who invokes the name of the everlasting one will be among that remnant.
There's a revolution happening in the soil. Scientists studying ecological restoration have discovered something remarkable, that under the right conditions, damaged soil can be restored faster than we can degrade it. Researchers at the University of Washington recently transformed what was once a garbage dump into productive farmland. And they did it in just 20 years. Not through heroic effort, but through patient practices that work with natural processes rather than working against them. They stopped fighting the earth. They stopped trying to control everything. They let the soil breathe. They made room for fungi and microorganisms they couldn't even see, and the land came back to life. Think about it. Faster to heal than to harm. This isn't just agricultural science. This is really good theology. Listen again what's embedded into Psalm 65. You, God, drench the furrows, breaking up the clods, softening with showers, blessing the yield. The psalmist understands something essential. Preparation for new life is disruption. What becomes compacted must be broken open. What is dried out must be saturated. What's hardened must be softened. But here's the promise. restoration happens. Not someday, not if we're perfect, not when we finally get our act together. God is already drenching, breaking, softening, blessing. The velocity of restoration is faster than the velocity of decay. Joel's vision doubles down on this wild hope. After describing devastation, locusts strip everything bare, land eaten away by scavengers, years of loss. God doesn't offer a slow, painful recovery. God promises abundance. The threshing floors will be full of grain. The vats will overflow with wine and oil. God promises restoration. I will restore the years that the swarming locusts have eaten. And then comes the promise that shatters what every hierarchy we've constructed. I will pour out my spirit on all humankind. Your daughters and sons will prophesy. Your elders will have prophetic dreams. Your young people will see visions. Not a trickle to the qualified, not a measured portion to those who've earned it, a pouring out on all of humanity. Daughters speaking alongside sons, elders dreaming dangerous dreams, young people seeing visions that the establishment hasn't approved. Even those who are bound, those we have silenced, marginalized, overlooked, receive the Spirit's full measure. This is the scandal of God's economy. The restoration happens faster than degradation, and it includes everyone. But beloved, this is where it gets uncomfortable. The restoration scientists, they succeed by doing less, not more. They stopped all the heavy tilling. They stopped all the heavy tilling that destroyed the fungal networks. They stopped pulling weeds and instead smothered them, letting them decompose back into nutrients. They stopped treating the soil like an enemy to be conquered and started treating it like an ecosystem that needs nourishment and to be nurtured. In leadership studies, there's emerging research on what they're calling hope-informed leadership. And it's not what you think. It's not blind optimism that everything will work out. It's not positive thinking divorced from reality. Hope, the research shows, is, quote, rooted in the resilience and the belief in potential, even when the future feels deeply uncertain, end quote. Hope acknowledges hardship with empathy while holding space for what's possible. Hope doesn't deny difficulties. It embraces them while refusing to let them have the final word. And here's the key finding. Hope as a leadership practice requires vulnerability, patience, and trust in the processes that you cannot fully control. Sound familiar? It's exactly what the psalmist describes and what many faith communities resist with everything they've got. We humans, we want to control outcome. We want to protect what was. We want to preserve structures we know, even when the structures are compacting the soil, even when preventing new growth, and when they are killing the very thing they claim to protect. But the promise is this: God is already at work preparing something new, and the preparation requires us to release our death grip on the old. twice in the brief passage from Joel. And by the way, Joel in the Bible is only 3 pages long. God makes the promise, my people will never again be put to shame. Shame is what keeps us silent. Shame is what makes us hide our questions. Shame is what convinces us that our voices don't matter. Our dreams aren't valid. Our vision isn't worth sharing. Shame is what maintains hierarchies by convincing people they don't deserve a place at the table or in the room. But God says, never again. And then God backs it up by pouring out the Spirit on everyone, not just the elders, not just the men, not just those with seminary degrees or long tenure or the right last name. Everyone. Your daughters, your sons, the young people you've been dismissing as inexperienced, the elders you've been too busy to hear, those who are in servitude or bound, those doing the unglamorous work that keeps everything running while getting a little recognition. This isn't democracy as we practice it, where everyone gets a vote, but power still accumulates at the top. The radical democracy of the Spirit, where God's voice comes through unexpected people, where truth emerges from the margins, where the vision for the future might be clearest to those we've been ignoring. Recent studies on regenerative agriculture reveal something stunning. The most successful restoration happens when farmers cultivate biodiversity, when they make room for multiple species, multiple ways of growing. Monocultures deplete the soil. Diversity enriches it. What is true of the land is also true for communities. When we insist that only certain voices matter, and when privilege, longevity over insight, when we can confuse control with stewardship, we're practicing monoculture. We're depleting the very soil we claim to protect. So what does restoration actually require? I'm not here to prescribe specific actions or tell you what exactly to do. That would violate the very spirit of Joel's vision. But I can tell you what Scripture and science reveal. Restoration requires making room for disruption. Those complicated clods must be broken up. That's not comfortable. That's not tidy, but it's necessary. Restoration requires patience with processes that we can't fully control. You can't force the soil to heal. You can't manufacture community. You can't legislate trust. You create these conditions when you wait, actively, attentively, but you must wait. Restoration requires listening to voices you've been dismissing, the daughters who want to speak truth, the young people who see things you've stopped noticing, the people doing the actual work while others make decisions. Restoration requires releasing the fantasy of perfection. Hope isn't about figuring it all out. Hope is about trusting God is at work, even, especially, in the mess. And restoration requires this: believing that God keeps promises, that shame doesn't get the last word, that the Spirit is being poured out, that your daughters and sons do have something to say, that the future God is preparing is genuinely brighter than what we've known. Here are what those soil scientists have discovered. restoration isn't dramatic. It's patient accumulation. It's small choices made consistently. It's trusting that the invisible work beneath the surface will eventually bear fruit. Leadership research confirms this. Building a culture of hope requires playing the long game with consistent effort, intentionality, and patience. The impact of hopeful leadership will grow steadily over time. This flies in the face how often we and much of the world often approach change. We want a dramatic gesture. We want the big decision, that moment that fixes everything once and for all. But that's not how soil works. That's not how community works. That's not how God usually works. God drenches the furrows. God breaks up the clods. God softens with showers. God blesses its yields. None of it's flashy. All is essential. The question is whether God is doing something new. The Spirit is being poured out. The years the locust ate are being restored. The promise stands. We will never again be put to shame. The question is whether we're willing to participate in the restoration or whether we'll keep clutching our compacted soil, afraid that if anything changes, everything will fall apart. Beloved, every community has multiple voices. Some voices who've been around long enough to remember everything. Some voices believe they can say yes or no and have that matter. Voices shape what is possible. They can keep protecting what's familiar and call it faithfulness. They can hold on to control and call it responsibility. They can silence new voices and call it maintaining standards. They can resist the Spirit's movement and call it preserving tradition. Or they can practice hope. They can trust that God is already at work, preparing this community for something yet not imagined. They can make room for daughters and sons to speak the truth, really speak it, not just repeat back what we want to hear. They can listen for dreams from elders that might challenge assumptions. They can pay attention to young people that might require real change. Those voices can stop being held by the past, not dismissing it, not dishonoring it, but not being imprisoned by it either. They can stop letting certain individuals veto the future because they're uncomfortable with change. They can choose to believe that the velocity of restoration is really faster than the velocity of decay. That healing is not only possible, but already underway. That the Spirit being poured out includes this community, this moment, these people. I don't know exactly what God is preparing for Mountain Rise, but I know something is shifting. You can feel it, can't you? That restlessness, that sense of some ways aren't quite working, the hunger for something more authentic, much more alive, more aligned with the gospel of welcome, love, justice, and peace. That the furrows are being drenched, the clods breaking up, that the hardness beginning to soften. And here is what God promises. After the preparation comes blessing. After the breaking comes abundance. After disruption comes the harvest. The threshing floors will be full of grain. The vats will overflow with oil. I admit, this isn't scary thinking. This isn't managed decline. This is God's wild abundance breaking into a community willing to be prepared for it. But, and this is crucial, abundance never looks like what you expect. It looks like your daughter speaking truths that make you uncomfortable. It looks like elders dreaming dreams that require you to risk doing something new. It looks like young people seeing visions that you demand to trust them with real responsibility. Abundance looks like the democracy of the Spirit, messy, surprising, sometimes scary, always life-giving. Beloved, the autumn rains are falling. The Spirit is being poured out. The years the locust ate are being restored. And God's promises stands. My people will never again be put to shame. The velocity of restoration is faster than the velocity of decay. The healing is already underway. The only question is whether we will be part of it. Amen.